Richard did not call it stealing. He called it stewardship. He stood at the head of my grandmother. His dining room table 14 days? After we buried her, and he used that word, specifically, stewardship. He said Mom had asked him to steward the estate, that she had trusted him above everyone else, that he was simply honoring her wishes. He was wearing her late husband's watch. I noticed it when he set his coffee cup down. My grandfather's watch, the one with the worn leather strap, and the small crack in the crystal that my grandmother had never repaired because she said it gave it character. Richard had it on his wrist, at her table, while he explained to her, children and grandchildren, how she had wanted him to be in charge. I looked at the watch. I looked at him. I picked up my coffee and I did not say a word. There were 8 of us in that room. My mother, 2 aunts, 3 cousins, Richard, and me. Richard had prepared. He had a folder. He had printed documents. He had the organized energy of a man who has been planning a presentation for longer than the occasion officially warranted. He said, over the past 18 months, Mom and I had many conversations about her wishes. She was concerned about the complexity of the estate and wanted someone she trusted to manage it. She signed several documents giving me authority to act on her behalf. The estate is valued at approximately $1.4 million. The house, her investment accounts, the 2 parcels of land in Vermont. Mom wanted the family taken care of. I intend to honor that. He looked around the table. He landed on me last. He held eye contact for exactly 1 second longer than necessary. I looked back at him. I thought about a Tuesday afternoon 14 months ago, when my grandmother had called me and said, "Clara, come and see me this week. There is something I need to tell you." Not on the phone, in person. I had gone on a Tuesday. We had sat at this same table. She had made tea. She had told me she had spoken with Gerald, that there was a document, that I was protected. I had thanked her. I had not asked questions. I had assumed she meant her will. Sitting across from Richard and his folder and my grandfather's watch on his wrist, I understood she had not meant her will at all. I drove home. I sat in my kitchen until it was dark outside. Then I called Gerald Marsh. Gerald had been my grandmother's attorney for 31 years. He had handled my grandfather's estate. He had updated her will 3 times. He had been present for every significant legal decision of her adult life. He was 76 years old, and he answered on the second ring as if he had been sitting next to the phone. I said, "Richard held a family meeting today. He says Grandma signed documents giving him control of the estate. He is saying he manages the distribution." Gerald said, "Come to my office tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. There are things we need to discuss that I cannot discuss on the phone." I said, "Is it serious?" He said, "Come at 9. I will have coffee ready." I was there at 8:50. Gerald's office smelled like old books and radiator heat. Same dark wood desk he had used for 40 years. Same organized shelves, same blue tie, always blue, every single time I had ever seen him. He poured coffee without asking, and he sat down and he opened a folder that was thicker than I expected. He said, "Your grandmother came to see me 3 years ago. She was concerned about certain patterns she had observed within the family. She did not name every detail, but she was clear about her intentions. She wanted to establish a structure that would protect her estate regardless of what documents she might sign in other contexts afterward." I said, "What kind of structure?" "A revocable living trust," he said. "Established 3 years ago, naming you as the sole beneficiary. The house, the investment accounts, the Vermont land, all of it transferred into the trust at the time of signing. The trust supersedes any subsequent power of attorney. It supersedes the will. It is the controlling document for the entire estate." I sat with that. "She never told me," I said. Gerald said, "She told you 14 months ago that she had made arrangements, that you were protected. Do you remember?" I remembered. The Tuesday, the tea, I had assumed she meant a bequest in her will. I had not asked. She had not elaborated. She had just said, "I want you to know that you are protected." And then she had poured more tea and asked me about my job, and we had talked about other things. For the rest of the afternoon, she had known what she meant. She had not needed me to understand it fully. She had just needed me to know it existed. Gerald looked at me over his glasses. He said, "Richard's documents grant authority over assets that are no longer in your grandmother's personal estate. They were transferred to the trust 3 years ago. There is nothing for his documents to act on. He has spent 18 months accumulating authority over an empty hand. I want to tell you what Richard had actually done in those 18 months, because the specificity of it matters. He had visited my grandmother every single day. Every morning. Coffee, errands, appointments, small repairs around the house. He had been attentive in a way none of the rest of us had matched because we had jobs and children and lives that did not permit daily visits to a woman who was, by all appearances, managing well on her own. My grandmother had accepted his attention graciously. She had told me herself, "Richard has been so good to me. He is here every morning." He had brought documents gradually, not all at once. A power of attorney 1 month, a property management authorization 2 months later. Documents he described as routine paperwork. Documents that a woman of 80, one who trusted her son and had no reason to distrust him, would sign without calling her attorney to review each one. He had been patient and methodical. He had built over 18 months a comprehensive portfolio of documents, authorizing him to manage and distribute a $1.4 million estate. What he did not know was that 3 years before he began his morning visits, my grandmother had driven herself to Gerald's office on a Tuesday afternoon and had spent 2 hours talking about her estate and her family and certain things she had observed over the years that concerned her. She had not confronted Richard. She had not accused him of anything. She had simply said to Gerald, "I want to make sure that when I am gone, my estate goes to the person I intend it to go to, regardless of what I may sign between now and then." Gerald had asked who she intended. She had said, "Clara. She is the only one who ever came to see me because she wanted to see me. Everyone else always wanted something. I could always tell the difference." She had transferred everything into the trust that afternoon. Then she had driven herself home. She had made dinner. She had not mentioned it to anyone. She had let Richard bring his documents the following year and the year after, and she had signed them politely and thanked him for his help, and given him no indication that any of it was irrelevant. She was not performing cruelty. She was simply done explaining herself to people who were not listening. Gerald and I met Richard and his attorney on a Thursday morning. 21st day after the family meeting. Conference room downtown, 14th floor. Richard arrived with a man named Holloway, who had a leather folder, a printed asset list, and the polished confidence of someone who has reviewed the documents and found them to be in order. Holloway presented first. He laid out the authority chain, the documents, the asset schedule. It was organized and thorough. Richard sat beside him with the expression of a man performing reluctant duty, which is the expression he always uses when he is doing something he has been looking forward to for a long time. Gerald let them finish. He did not interrupt. He did not take notes. He sat with his hands folded on the table and he let the entire presentation complete itself. Then he opened the manila envelope he had brought. He removed 4 pages held together with a plain black binder clip. He placed them on the table. He slid them across to Holloway. He said, "I would like you to read the document on top, specifically the date on page 1 and the asset schedule on page 3. Holloway picked it up. He read the first page. He looked at the filing date. 3 years ago. He turned to page 3. The asset schedule, house, investment accounts, Vermont parcels, all transferred into the trust on the filing date. He looked at the filing date again. He looked at the dates on Richard's documents. He set the trust document down. He looked at Richard. Richard picked it up himself. He read the first page. He found the date. His eyes moved across it twice. He turned to page 3. He read his mother's signature at the bottom, her handwriting, the specific careful cursive she had used her entire life. He set the document down. The color left his face. Not slowly, quickly, like something being switched off. He said, "I was not told about this." Gerald said, "Your mother was not required to tell you about it." Richard looked at me across the table. I looked back at him. There was nothing to say that the document had not already said more precisely than, "I could have managed." Holloway asked for a recess. He and Richard went into the hallway. Through the glass, I watched them talk. Richard's posture changed in the hallway in a way I had never seen it change before. He had always carried himself with the ease of someone who believes the room is arranged in his favor. In that hallway, he looked different. Not physically smaller, just different. The way a person looks when the thing they built turns out to have been built on someone else's property. They came back after 11 minutes. Holloway said, "We would like to review the trust document with our own estate counsel before proceeding further." Gerald said, "Of course. It is a matter of public record. Your counsel is welcome to pull the original filing." Holloway gathered his papers. The asset list, the authority chain, the 18 months of carefully assembled documents. He put all of it back into the leather folder and he closed it. He shook Gerald's hand. He did not shake mine. He and Richard left. The door clicked shut. Gerald poured himself a glass of water. He took a sip. He said, "That went as expected." I said, "She knew exactly what he would do." He said, "She knew exactly what he would do. That is why she did not leave anything to chance." Holloway's estate counsel reviewed the trust document and confirmed its validity within 3 weeks. Richard did not contest it. To contest it, he would have needed to argue that his mother lacked capacity or had been under undue influence at the time of signing. She had initiated the trust herself. She had driven herself to the attorney's office. She had signed in front of 2 witnesses and a notary. There was no argument available. He knew it. His attorney knew it. The estate transferred to me in full 6 months after that conference room. The house, the accounts, the Vermont land, all of it exactly as my grandmother had arranged 3 years before any of this began. I kept the house. I go there on Sunday mornings now. I sit in the kitchen at the same table where she made tea and told me that I was protected. The kitchen still smells like cardamom. The crack in my grandfather's watch crystal has been repaired. I had it done because my grandmother was right, that it gave it character, and wrong that it should stay broken forever. I think about her driving herself to Gerald's office on a Tuesday afternoon 3 years before she died, not telling anyone, not asking permission, just sitting across from a man in a blue tie and saying exactly what she wanted and signing exactly what she intended and driving herself home and making dinner and not mentioning it to a single person. She let Richard bring his documents. She signed them. She thanked him for his help. She drank his coffee every morning and let him believe he was building something. She had already finished building. 3 years before he started. That is the kind of quiet that cannot be undone. That is what she left me.